Ladies and gentlemen, it has been such an incredibly exciting day today for Marvel Contest of Champions news, and it hasn't stopped there. We now have the official announcement for Act 5 coming on March 8th. So it's going to be released in a total of 4 chapters, and it's going to be, there's an undesignated time frame. So we're going to have Chapter 1, and they have no idea when the next chapters are going to come out, but they're all going to come out before the end of 2017. So we have all the information on Chapter 1 and some of the new nodes and some of the rewards for Chapter 1. However, they still haven't announced or decided on the rewards for like fully completing Act 5. So we're going to delve through this today. So as we said, that on March 8th, next Wednesday, is going to be when Act 5 Chapter 1 releases. So one of the big things that people are talking about is these 5 new nodes. And I'm actually like a little bit excited for a lot of these nodes. However, I'm a little bit cautious about one of them. And the one of them that I'm most cautious about is actually the first one, which is a new node called Flare. So it gives your character a 300% attack boost. That is a lot of damage there, but as a penalty of that, you degenerate 100% of your maximum health over 60 seconds. And if you have a class disadvantage, it's going to be 150%, and if you have a class advantage, it's only going to be 50% of your maximum health. So this node initially, it seems a lot better than just the standard degeneration that we've got at the moment, because it might have some sort of interesting mechanic with certain fights. I also have like a question about this node, as in like, will it only trigger once? So once those 60 seconds are up, do you not degenerate any more health? Because if so, then you can use certain champions to kind of completely bypass this degeneration, especially if it's champions that are only taking 50% of their maximum health. It doesn't seem like in some scenarios this is going to be a problem. It looks like in most fights, like, you're just going to be able to destroy the opponent very, very quickly. You're going to take a little bit of damage. So that's really not the node that I'm not the most impressed about, but it might be interesting. I'm interested to see how they use it in the game. So the next node we have is a node called Breakthrough. So it says champion, in brackets the boss, so I think this is going to be like a boss exclusive node. We'll start the fight with 5,000 armor rating, which we're not really too sure if that's a lot at the moment, but it seems like a lot just from reading it. And every time you land a hit, it will reduce that armor rating by 100 permanently. So it's kind of like a bigger version of the tech symbiote that you regularly fight in Alliance Quest if you take any paths with tech opponents. So once you land 50 hits, this bonus armor rating will have been completely overcome, and then you can start doing some big damage, I assume, or your regular damage. I actually quite like the idea of this mechanic, because it means that to actually conquer certain bosses, providing that there isn't any BS, you're actually going to have to stay alive, you're going to have to keep on fighting, keep that combo like above 50, so that you can get to the really, really decent damage. So it's maybe something where you're going to have to learn a fight, learn how to completely dominate a boss before you can actually get like a really nice amount of damage. It could make for some very interesting fight design. I'm interested to see Breakthrough in action. I have high hopes for that one. I don't really see any BS, but maybe combined with something like Flare, it might be a little bit tricky, but I'm interested to see kind of how they use some of these nodes. Now, Life Transfer, I actually quite like this one. So you degenerate 2% of your max health per second. However, you steal 125% of the damage you deal as health. That seems pretty easy to overcome that degen with like almost like any character in the game. A lot of the hard-hitting champions. I think this might, more often than not, be really, really beneficial, because 125% of the damage you deal as health is a lot of health. It's a crazy, crazy amount of health for a lot of champions. So Life Transfer, initially, I really, really like this node, but I'm interested to see it in practice. Maybe it's a little bit more aggressive in practice than I'm predicting, but it seems like you should be able to quite easily counter that degen, providing that you're playing, you know, quite aggressively. Even if you're not, it seems really, really easy to counter. But I like that. I like that one. It seems good in theory. But let's see what else, you know, it's combined with. So the next one is Burden of Might. A bit of a weird one here. So every time you gain a buff, you lose 25% of your max power, and you also get a 15% reduction to power gain for every buff currently active on you. And this is not per unique buffs. So for example, a Phoenix of 7 Furies will have a 100% reduction in power gain. So it's kind of like, yeah, you know, if you're using any champions that have buffs, you're not going to be able to get off any specials. Seems like a little bit of a weird one, just to kind of reduce damage output and prolong the fight a bit. But, you know, we'll see how that is in practice. You know, that might be really, really tricky on some fights. and might gimp certain champions, but again, it's one we're going to have to see. I don't think that one's necessarily too bad. I mean, I'd much rather have something like this than something like Power Flood, which you completely can't control, and sometimes the enemy just goes to a level 3 one-shots you. I think this is much better. Like, it doesn't seem to have any like really big negative. So Burden of Might seems interesting at first. Well, not too interesting, but better than Power Flood. So the next one we have is Power Focus. A little bit of a weird one here, but this is actually quite a good one and might have some really good synergies with certain characters. So you gain increased critical rate equivalent to 25% of the percentage of your maximum power. So for example, at 100% max power, you have 25% additional crit, and if you have 40% of your max power, you have like 10% increased crit. So this might make some champions that really rely on critting, like Guillotine or Scarlet Witch or Wolverine X23, maybe really good on nodes like that. So I'm interested to see kind of the use of Power Focus and how it comes into play in Act 5. And the final one we have is Brute Force. Again, I quite like the design of this node. This one isn't too bad. It's forcing you into a very aggressive playstyle. So if you have not landed a hit in 6 seconds, you begin to suffer degeneration that deals 100% of your max health over 30 seconds. And the strength of that degeneration is more if you have a class disadvantage. Is it the same? If is 3.3% max health if you have neutral advantage, and then it's half of that if you have a class advantage. So I like the idea of Brute Force, because that, you know, there's a way to play around that, and that's by playing really aggressively, which is a really good kind of skill to have and overcome in Marvel Contest of Champions. But maybe combined with some other stuff, you know, when you like throw in certain nodes in here with other nodes, some stuff might be a little bit tricky to play around. So I'm interested to see kind of how they weave some of these nodes together, maybe with some pre-existing ones. But so far, like, I don't see any nodes on here that are potentially like 100% BS. Flare, you know, Flare is much better than Degeneration. I mean, Degeneration, you just take, like, a lot of damage over 60 seconds. Probably, Starburst in Act 4 at the moment is probably about more than 100% of your max health over 60 seconds. And you don't have the 300% attack boost, and you can't negate it with a class advantage. And plus, if it only lasts for the first 60 seconds, if you use a champion like Wolverine X23, Dr. Voodoo, Doctor Strange, there are a lot of characters that have kind of like slight regeneration that can kind of come back from this in a fight. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see Flare. Like, Flare's the only one that's a little bit of a big question mark for me when it comes to the new Act 5 nodes. So, let's talk about the rewards. So, at the moment, they only have the rewards for Chapter 1 completion and exploration, which just for a single chapter completion and exploration seem pretty good to me. So, you have, for the completion, it's 400 5-star crystal shards, 2 generic catalyst, tier 4 catalyst, 10 tier 4 class catalyst fragment crystals, and 800 4-star shards, and 130 units. And for the exploration, you get 600 5-star shards, 1 tier 4 class catalyst crystal, 20 tier 4 class catalyst fragment crystals, 1,200 4-star hero crystal shards, 1 generic 4-star awakening gem, which I think is probably the headline of that, like 1 generic 4-star from every chapter. If we can get that, that'd be pretty great. So I'm interested to see, you know, if that is the kind of standard reward for every chapter. I mean, if it's in Chapter 1 just for the exploration, if you look at the, like, Act 4 rewards as well, they ramp up quite a bit. Progressing out through the chapter. So I think this is kind of a really a good base level of rewards to start at, and I'm really interested to see kind of the difficulty of the first chapter. There is a quote from Kaban Mike about the difficulty of this. How hard is Act 5? They said, if you can't finish Master difficulty for the monthly event quest, you're going to have a bad time. So I'm not too sure where the difficulty is going to fall. I believe personally that it's going to be a stepping stone between the road to Labyrinth of Legends and Labyrinth of Legends itself, and the rewards kind of seem to correlate with that from what we've seen. So overall, there is a lot of potentially exciting stuff in Act 5. So, ladies and gentlemen, I for one am actually quite excited for Act 5. I think there's a lot of potentially really interesting stuff and gameplay mechanics that could be incorporated into some of the fights. So yeah, really looking forward to it. So next Wednesday, March the 8th, we're going to be doing a run of it live. So be sure, you know, if you want to kind of sneak peek at Act 5 and maybe some of the secret strats, be sure to tune into that live because it's going to be a very fun journey. And I'm just hoping that there is not a lot of BS in this. I'm pleasantly surprised by a lot of this node design. There's no stuff like fawns or all or nothing from what I can see, but they might still add those in. But I quite like all of the new nodes. But if you don't like any of the new nodes, let me know why you think like a certain one is a really bad design. But from what I can see, all of these seem like perfectly doable to counter, but we're gonna have to see if they like stack up or anything. Like, it's a little hard to tell until Act 5 is actually released. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Apart from that, take care and have an absolutely fantastic day.